Hello and welcome to GNF. I'm your host Vikrant. Today's show is power packed. Facts first, drama last. Ukraine's air defense is about 6%, not 66. Next, why Ukraine has declared Patriot system useless, a piece of junk. This is not just Ukraine's issue, it has become a big headache for entire NATO. After that, the China satellite scare. Orbits are physics, not partnership. We expose more Zelensky's lies in this episode. And we close with Europe's theater. France raids a Russian tanker, Boroke, makes a speech, then quietly lets it go. Germany assumes that drones are Russian. Big headlines, thin proof, less slogan, more scoreboard. So, buckle up, let's start. Ukraine's air defense is working at about 6% success. 6%, not 60. If that were a school grade, you would not get detention, you would get a new school. Now here is the part that hurts NATO bragging rights. Yurii Ihnat, the man who speaks for Ukraine's Air Force, just explained why their Patriot batteries are struggling. His words, not mine, I am quoting from Ukrainska Pravda. Of course, it is more difficult to counter missiles flying on a quasi-ballistic trajectory. They oscillate as they approach the target. This makes the work of the Patriot system more complicated because it operates in automatic mode when engaging ballistic missiles. It becomes harder to calculate the point at which the interceptor collides with or explodes near the incoming missile. Translation into common sense? The missiles wobble, duck, dive, and arrive from odd angles. The Patriot computer gets nervous, gets confused. The intercept math breaks, the target keeps going, the siren keeps ringing. Why is this happening now? Because Russia tweaked the code and the hardware. The Financial Times, the FT, had reported on October 2nd that Moscow has likely modified two key systems. One is Iskander-M, a mobile launcher that fires missiles up to around 500 kilometers. The other is Kinzhal air-launched ballistic weapon that flies roughly the same range in the current use case. The trick is simple and evil. Fly a classic ballistic profile so radar relaxes and then change course late and drop fast or zig just enough to scramble the Patriot's brain. Patriots love clean arcs, without any disruption. These modified missiles don't give clean arcs. Patriots prefer one direction of approach. These missiles come from many. Patriots want a fixed collision point. These move the goalpost while you are kicking. Let's be clear about what this means. If the flagship NATO air defense, the one in all the brochures, the one that costs more than a small airport, can get spoofed by quasi-ballistic turns and multi-vector attacks, then everyone under that umbrella is getting wet. It is not only a Ukraine problem now, it is a doctrine problem. Europe was told that this US-made defense system will protect your skies. Russia just said, watch this, and the scoreboard agreed. When your crown jewel struggles, your castle is not as safe as the posters said. Let's also talk about the orange elephant tweeting in the room. The man in the White House keeps promising Ukraine will retake all its land and maybe grab some extra from Russia. With what? Motivational quotes? If your air defenses are batting 6% and your enemy's missiles are literally joking in mid-air, your chances of winning are practically very close to zero. So if NATO keeps pretending this is not a problem and keeps marching down the escalation road, the skies over Europe becomes a lab Russia loves to use. More missiles probe, more angles, more defenses burn, more interceptors. Logistics scream, budgets cry, and the same officials who said, "We have the best air defense in the world," will suddenly say, "No system is perfect." That's a cute line for a press conference, not for a night when your refinery, your power plant, and your command bunker are all blinking on the same radar screen. Moving on, we have new episode of Blame China, Save Face, starring Kiev's PR team. The plot twist is recycled, the acting is loud, and the facts are orbital, literally orbital. So here is the claim. Ukraine's authorities and outlets say Chinese spy satellites flew over western Ukraine on the night of October 4th and 5th, right when Russia hit targets with missiles and drones. Big scary names are thrown in. Yaogan 33, Yaogan 3303, Yaogan 3304, 9 passes over Lviv between midnight and late morning. Then they claim that Yaogan 34 shows up around 6 am and makes 7 orbits. Add a dramatic soundtrack and boom, China helped Russia, it becomes the headline. Now, reality. Satellites orbit. That is literally their job. This is not breaking news. They loop the planet on fixed paths set at launch. Those paths bring them over Ukraine again and again, all year round. China operates more than 60 Yaogan satellites that can do optical, radar, and electronic sniffing. So yes, 1 or 3 or 10 of them passing over Lviv is not rare, not shocking, and not proof of anything except gravity is still working. If you check enough nights, you will find plenty of passes because that is how orbits work. No room for conspiracy. So why this sudden noise now? Timing. There is chatter that Washington could give Ukraine fresh intelligence for long-range strikes inside Russia. Now that is politically toxic because once American targeting helps hit deep Russian sites, Moscow won't call it Ukrainian attack, it will call it American attack. That opens doors no one in NATO wants to walk through. Solution from Kiev's spin doctors? Point at the sky and say, "See, we have seen China satellites. They were overhead. Let's peddle this fake story so that we can get a justification to use American intel for strikes inside Russia." That is the plan. Let's keep it simple. Russia is a space power. It does not need to borrow anyone's eyes to hit targets in Ukraine. It has its own imaging, its own signals intelligence, its own ground networks, and its own navigation system. And that last point matters. Only a handful of countries in the world have full navigation system. 3 of them are BRICS countries: Russia, China, and India. Russia can guide missiles and time strikes without begging GPS for directions. So the idea that Moscow waits for a Yaogan pass to find a power plant in Lviv is a bedtime story for anxious donors. Meanwhile, the same people who yell Chinese satellites forget a small detail. Those same Yaogans, the Chinese satellites, they also fly over Poland, Romania, and Germany, and even Russia. The Baltic, the Black Sea, everywhere. It depends on the orbit. Are we going to claim China is running everyone's war plans? Every day? Everywhere? Of course not. We only discover the passes when a headline needs a villain with a long name. So when you see that headline, the satellite scare headline next time on your feed, take a breath. Passing overhead is not proof of participation, it is proof of physics, gravity. If Washington decides to hand over deep strike targeting, that is escalation with a return address. That will remain escalation no matter what. No matter how many Yaogans happen to be in the sky. And if Kiev needs a cover story for that decision, it will find one. Today's prop is a Chinese radar bird. Tomorrow's prop will be something else. The only constant is the push to drag everyone deeper while pretending no one moved. Moving on, our next report is brought to you by the EU's favorite hobby, shouting Shadow Fleet and then tripping over its own shoelaces. So here is the plot. France went full action movie and stormed a Russian oil tanker named Boroke. Yes, Navy commandos went in. Yes, live raid at sea was recorded, and President Macron did the victory speech also. He himself said, I'm quoting, "We have now decided to take a step further by moving towards a policy of obstruction when we have suspicious ships in our waters that are involved in this trafficking." Big words, big music, big headline, and then a tiny hush hush ending. The tanker was released within 2 days and sailed on to India. Quietly, no drum roll, no sequel. Why this sudden silence? That is the question. Because once the shouting stopped, the paperwork spoke. No drone gear on board, as it was alleged. No mystery violations, as it was alleged by EU papers. Ship was in good condition. Documentation was clean. Translation, no case. Even if you take the matter to an EU court, you risk a judge saying, "Thank you for wasting our time." So Paris chose the smart exit. Loud speech, soft walk back. It is not law, it is theater with uniforms. Now about those shadow fleets. Brussels sells this fake story every week. According to the myth, dark ships sneak around Europe, switch off transponders, and smuggle Russian oil to India and China. EU also believes that these ships are used to launch drones into EU skies. But you need evidence, not vibes. With Boroke, the proof morphed into possibility and then evaporated. First, we heard that tanker was linked to drone sightings in Denmark. Then the smoke machine broke. No drones, no links, nothing to hold in courts. Result, release the ship. Pretend nothing happened. Hope nobody asked questions. But of course, someone has to keep the scare alive. So, enters Berlin. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz stepped up on Sunday and said he assumed that Russia was behind drones over Germany this weekend. The key word is assumed. Not proved, not traced, assumed. If I assume my neighbor stole my sandwich, it does not make him guilty, it makes me hungry. This is Europe's problem. Too many press conferences, too little proof. And here is the funniest part. Every decisive EU stunt like this ends the same way. You raid first, you brief the press, you chase ghost drones, wave the sanctions flag, and then quietly back down when the case file is empty. This was all about EU's clown show today. That's all. Thank you very much for joining. You're watching GNF.